We have a quorum. I'll call the Littleton Conservation Commission meeting of May 13th, 2025 to order. Our agenda is pretty busy tonight, so to the extent that we can get through things quickly, I would appreciate that. I also, just so you're all aware, it's not my intention to cut people off, but I am going to try real hard to keep people on target in terms of time. So, hopefully we can get through it all and
Yeah,
be done
give
by
a quick
9:30.
reminder beforehand too.
Yeah, and
I think that'll
I
help.
recognize I'm saying that right now to an empty list of attendees,
Yeah.
but we may need to remind folks.
Yeah, I think a brief reminder is worth it to help keep them on track.
Let's start with the minutes of March 18th, 2025 and April 8th, 2025. Do we have any additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes? Hearing none, can we get a motion to approve those two sets of minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from our March 18th and April 8th meeting, 2025 meetings.
I'll second.
And just to keep things moving, I'll just run the roll call votes tonight. Motion's been made and seconded. Michael?
Michael Livingston, aye.
Ed?
Ed Foltz, aye.
Kyle?
Kyle Maxwell, aye.
And myself, Chase Gerbegan. Aye. Okay. Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you to take us through the administrative discussion items.
Sure. Up first, we have a scout project proposal. We have Sid here to talk to the construction of a boardwalk at Hartwell, which we previously permitted as an order of conditions that happened last year. So Sid, if you want to unmute your mic and you can give a brief description of the project.
Yeah, so essentially, I'm looking to build a boardwalk to avoid the trampling of borderland wetland vegetation at the conservation land at Hartwell. And the boardwalk's going to stretch about 80 feet to avoid the destruction of nearby vegetation and for avoiding any injuries when traversing the conservation land. According to my Eagle project, I have completed a project proposal to outline the steps, and I've contacted Jim O'Neill to coordinate the project construction and process on the Boy Scout side of things. And it's mainly there to protect the wildlife while also using public to safely use the conservation land and protect the wildlife there.
So a couple questions here for you, Sid. Talk us through real quick project funding and project timeline.
Yeah, so to start the project, I initially need to have approval from the Boy Scouts Heart of New England Council, which should happen following this meeting once I get approval from the Conservation Department. And regarding funding, funding for the actual lumber and materials to construct the boardwalk have been raised already by the department. And regarding the materials needed for additional hardware, which is around $300, I've raised through donations and nearby grants from other organizations that could be used towards the finishing the funding for the project as well. And I'd need approval from the the Conservation Department to sign off on the fundraising approval form for that. And regarding the timeline again, upon approval, I plan to finish the project by the mid-August to early September, following upon approval and during this spring/summer.
So, Tim, it sounds like, according to Sid, the resources are available to him that we're contributing. Is that right?
Yeah, the lumber was purchased a while ago. It's over at Jim's place. We just need the additional hardware to fasten the boardwalk, and so that's what Sid's going to be raising funds for.
Okay. So, Sid, what are you looking for from us tonight?
I'm looking for the Conservation Department to sign off on the fundraising form for me to raise the funds for the hardware needed, as well as on my Eagle Scout project proposal, so I can start on the project itself after gaining approval from the council following this meeting.
Okay. And Tim, we've got the permitting in place, you said, for all this. We don't have any Wetland Protection Act activities here.
We've got an order of conditions for the project. Yep.
Okay.
So if you guys just want to vote, I can sign off on your behalf when Sid comes into the office.
Then I'll move to authorize conservation agent to sign off on Sid's Eagle Scout project proposal.
Chase, did we get the proposal? Did I not see it in the email anywhere?
So and the proposal
The
hasn't
proposal
been
is the NOI.
to us yet. Yeah, we have to vote on it first.
Ah, okay. All right. In that
Second.
case,
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Ed, you're up first.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
Chase, myself, Chase Gerbeck guy. Sid, good luck with this.
Yeah.
Please let Tim know when you're kicking this off with as much notice as you can.
Yep.
Largely because I think we'd be interested in knowing, and you may find some volunteers too.
Yep, definitely. Sounds good. Thank you.
Good luck, Tim.
The reason I wanted to see the proposal is because where is it at? Is it the entrance over at the Hartwell parking lot, the long pond trail?
Yeah, it's on the Hartwell Conservation Land. It's a ways into the land, but it's been mapped out based on the previous proposal, and it's along the conservation land.
Yeah,
That's
if you go back through it, we have the NOI that we went through.
Okay.
It laid out the area. Where
All right, I missed it. And just keep in mind, or whenever possible, make room for horses to be able to get through.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry to slow you down, Chase.
Oh, no worries. I'm sorry. I should have given the rest of the commission a chance to weigh in. Maybe I won't move quite so quick.
Before we move on to the next one, though, I don't see Piper Lane, John on here anywhere. Wasn't he supposed to be? He was supposed to be on the one previous, or did we say we're going to hold off until the end of May so that he would be able to show at the end of May that he did his requirements of removing that storage unit?
Are you talking about Mr. McGagan? There was no request for him to return. He just, after the last meeting, what we wanted from him was confirmation that the storage container was moved. And he did provide a photo to me, and I drove by the house, and he did move it outside the 50.
I saw the container was moved, but I also saw last time I drove by, which is maybe a week ago, there was still a trailer there.
Oh, okay.
So
Sid, you're all set. We're good with you, unless you want to hang out for the rest of the meeting.
Sorry, Sid,
You're all set for the evening.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Thank you.
all right. All right, that was my only question on that. So
Tim, can you double check on that next time you're in the area? Put eyeballs on it.
Yeah, I mean, Memorial Day is coming up quick. He should have that thing theoretically out of there by then. And then the next thing we'd be waiting on is for them to contact me once they've removed the dirty fill, right?
okay, Memorial Day was the requirement to have the storage unit completely out. So
Right. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Next up, Tim.
Yep. Next up, we got the request for a minor modification, 04 Pond. We should have Steve Marsh, and I'm not seeing him. So we will move on to the next one, which is request for a 3-year extension to the order conditions at 242 King. I'm assuming Dave Ketchen is the one here to talk to that. Dave, I'm going to promote you over.
Hey, Dave. How you doing? Oh, there he is, I think. Hey,
Hey
Dave.
everyone,
How you doing, Dave?
how are you?
Good. Day.
You want to give us a quick rundown of what you're looking for?
Yeah, so we're looking for an extension for the 242 King Street order of conditions. We're only asking for it through the end of 2025. I'm not quite sure, Tim, why it says 3-year on there. But essentially, the order of conditions runs out, I believe, in June or July. We're coming up on it, so we just need an extension. Construction's on schedule still for that site, so we're hoping things are wrapped up by end of summer, early fall.
So Dave, you're looking for, should we be safe and give you a 1 year extension? I appreciate that you're not looking for all 3 years, but maybe we give ourselves a little room for.
Yeah, that would probably make more sense. Just do it one full year.
Tim, while we're talking about this, say, have you been out there at all lately? I'm curious how it's handled all this rain with the basins and everything. I saw looked like stuff is flowing through. I'm just curious to see what the wetlands look like.
Yeah, last time I was out there was about, I think, a month and a half ago.
Okay. Dave, have you been out? Can you?
Yeah. I mean, the site seems to be working very well. The basins are obviously full, so I think it's doing what it's supposed to with water storage and keeping things in place.
How does the sort of back portion of the site, the portion closest to the wetlands where we, I think, had the most challenges, is that relatively stable, Dave, or
Yeah,
having
it's
any
pretty
problems
stable.
there?
No, I mean, obviously, just on the rainy days, it's a little muddy, but no major runoff or anything like that. Nothing that we've had to work around. So I think once grass is planted and the drive's done, I think we'll be in really good shape.
Just glad we're not dewatering anymore.
Yeah.
Great. Now I'm just making sure that system's functioning properly and flowing through those culverts. But I would assume there's still a SWIP and whatnot for the site, right? So Tim, do you see those reports?
Yeah, they get sent over to me.
Okay.
When was the last time we had Green out there, Tim, as a third party to take a look at it? And should we think about doing that at some point in the rainy season of this year?
It's been a while since they've been out there. Has to been at least a year. Last time I was out there, the site was looking pretty good. They just installed brand new erosion controls around the whole site. There weren't really any erosion concerns. I don't think it's super necessary to have Green go out there. I've just been so busy putting together stuff for this meeting that I haven't been able to get a chance to go out there. I've got a couple of sites that I have a list of that I've been meaning to get to, and I'll probably be able to get to next week.
I guess that's partly why I raise it, Tim, is this is an instructive example of where, Dave, we don't want to unnecessarily spend Light and Water's money inspecting things, but at the same time, when we're short-staffed, we're telling a lot of our applicants that we may need to lean on third-party support. So, Tim, I'm going to put that in your court. If you're not able to get out and look at it, let's say in the next month, I think it's well within the context of the contract we have with Green to provide third-party review support here to have them go out and do it on our behalf.
Okay. Yeah. And we also have Amy, who's starting to help out with certain things starting on Thursday. So she'll officially be rehired. And so, we can always, she's kind of requested more task related things rather than coming into the office and doing administrative work, which works for me.
Sure.
So another option there.
Great. I like it. So, any other comments on this requested extension here? Then I'll
go for it.
Then I'll move that we issue a 1-year extension to the 242 King Street project, Mass DEP file number 204959.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ed Foltz.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Michael Livingston.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Myself, Chase Gerwig, aye. Tim, do you want to run through these COCs first, or do you want to jump to the 745 hearing?
I think we could probably jump to the 745. We do have one public hearing that we'll be able to skip because they requested a withdrawal. So in the event that we have time to wait, we can jump back into the administrative items and fill it with that.
Okay, very good. Then we'll open up the 745 public hearing, notice of intent for 64 Beaverbrook Road, Lot 1. I imagine in this process we'll also discuss 64 Beaverbrook Road, Lot 3. Who's here to speak to that? Looks like we have someone with their hand raised. Oh, Greg Roy of Dillison Roy. Hey, Greg. Should be able to speak now.
Hey, folks, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Super. Thank
Do you
you.
want to take us through this one a little bit?
Will do. Thanks for your time. Greg Roy with Dillison Roy Civil Design Group. I am representing the applicants, the Gruars at 64 Beaverbrook Road. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, there are two hearings here. We're proposing two lots, and we decided to separate those filings just for really on the back end when things are all constructed and one lot maybe sitting there not built yet and the other one isn't and wants to be conveyed, that, you know, from a title standpoint and conveyance issue, closing one order of conditions out is easier than having one that's not done. So I apologize if that enters any confusion into the mix here, but so I wanted to give you a brief overview. I am keenly aware, I'll say at the front end here, I'm keenly aware the Department of DEP has not issued a file number on this yet. We are proposing, as I'll mention in a minute, a wetland crossing by necessity. So I would imagine that your commission will also likely like to go out and look at it on site. So I understand that we have some process ahead of us here. So I wanted to use tonight as sort of an overview for you, how the project came together, and give you an overview of what we're proposing. Can I share my screen? Is that acceptable?
Yes, it is. In fact, it'd be great if you could sort of walk us through some plans here.
Let me do that right now. Hold on.
And Greg, while you're doing that, it looks like when I looked through the package, the notices have gone out to abutters.
Yes,
Is that
I
all
did send that.
square?
We did send that over to Tim, copies of those
Okay.
notifications to Tim, I think today. So we did send those out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. So the property, as I mentioned, is 64 Beaverbrook Road. There is an existing house. I'm going to do some highlighting here. Let me try to get this bigger. The existing house sits right here on the screen here. You can see Beaverbrook Road is right here on the right-hand side of the screen. The existing driveway comes into the house and access is right in this location here. The property extends quite a ways back. There's a lot of usable upland area in the back of the property. There are a couple of bordering vegetated wetland areas on site, and I'm going to highlight them. The most significant one is right in here, like this. And then it kind of necks down right here, narrows up, and then it widens up in this point. So all this area through the middle of the site is classified as bordering vegetated wetland. So there's no way to access the upland buildable portions of the site without proposing the wetland crossing that we're proposing. There is enough land area in the back for two lots, which is what we're proposing. We've done the septic testing back there to demonstrate that we have adequate soils for septic areas, but we did not dare propose two separate wetland crossings, two separate driveways, because we wanted to, of course, look to minimize impacts to the wetland resource areas, knowing that we'd have to cross. So we're proposing a shared driveway configuration from Beaverbrook Road, which is right in this location here. We chose this portion of the site because it is in a location where the wetlands is narrowest, and we can do a minimal amount of filling to achieve the project purpose. And then we would branch off to the two lots. So this first house that you come to is what we're talking about, is the subject of this application, which is lot 1. It also includes the actual wetland crossing and fill portion, which is why I'm addressing it now. But we would branch off, and I'll talk about this portion in the second hearing, to lot 2, which is over on this part of the site. In order to meet the performance standards of the Wetlands Protection Act, we did provide you some narratives in our packet relative to our request for the allowance for the proposed wetland fill, both pursuant to the Wetlands Protection Act, but also pursuant to your local wetland bylaw. as I stated, there's no way to access the upland portion of the site without doing that wetland fill. But we are proposing mitigation, wetland replication. Immediately adjacent, it's this portion right here. There's details, specifications, and planting details on the second sheet, which I won't show you, at the moment, just for clarity. But we did provide specifications for that replication area in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetland Replication Guidance that DEP has. And I think the only other thing I wanted to mention, by way, again, trying to keep this a little bit high level, knowing that we'll probably get a little bit more in the weeds to address questions either tonight or future meetings and DEP comments that we may get, is that the site constitutes greater than 40,000 square feet of alteration, site disturbance, both in and outside of the buffer zones, but that requires compliance with the town's stormwater management bylaw. So we have filed jointly with the planning board for that process. But those regulations required us to do some stormwater management. So although the project doesn't constitute 4 or more lots and wouldn't otherwise need to comply by letter of the law with the Massachusetts Stormwater Management Policy pursuant to the Wetlands Protection Act, your town bylaw requires it. So we're getting a little bit extra level of protection than we otherwise would on a project of this size. And we have indeed proposed some stormwater management areas. One of them is right in this location, and another one I'll talk about on the next filing is in the back there. So we did file a full stormwater management calculation report that you would see, customarily see, to document compliance with the Massachusetts Stormwater Management Standards. We filed that with the planning board, and they will be peer reviewing that as part of that process. So I wanted to, and we haven't even gotten there yet.
You know that in the sense that they've told you that, or you're just anticipating?
They have gotten a quote for the peer review. We're going to open that meeting on Thursday night. Okay. So the peer review hasn't been done, but we know that it is forthcoming. So,
well, I'm going to save you a little bit of suspense here and maybe make sure we don't lose this piece. Tim, can you coordinate with Marin? Let's assume that we're going to glom onto that peer review, and we may have some Wetland Protection Act specific concerns, but it doesn't make any sense to do this with 2 different peer reviewers.
Yeah, I already spoke to Marin about that. And what we landed on was if there was anything specific that you guys wanted to see included in there that wasn't going to be typically covered by them, that's typically covered in the stormwater peer reviews, that I can mention it to her. Okay.
Sorry, Greg, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that's fair enough. And again, that's about all I had, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to take any questions. Like I said, we did go out and stake the center line of the driveway. I think we staked a bunch of things. I think we staked the house locations, the center line of the driveway through the buffer zones. I think we staked the limits of the buffer zones. The wetland areas are, of course, flagged. So if and when your commission would like to get together to go out and take a look at the site, we should be able to orientate ourselves very effectively and show you where things are out there.
Okay. Let me open it up. I got about 10 questions for you, Greg, but let me open it up to the rest of the commission first before I start firing away.
I'm curious about what the shape of the wetland is south of the area where you intend to do the reclamation. I mean, I know that the border of the property is there, but does it open up wide at that point? And what kind of impact is it going to have on creatures that would normally be crossing there?
Good question. It's been a little while since I've been out there. I think that actually flows from an outfall of a detention basin from the adjacent development. I think it's a condo development that's there.
Yeah.
But I can't recall what the next flag off-site would be, if you will. But we can certainly look at that.
Your plan is to fill in the wetlands, but why didn't you look instead at crossing it? How wide is it?
It's about 10 feet from the looks of it, maybe a little less.
So why wouldn't you build a 10-foot bridge effectively? We did that on another property, and that let the water flow and basically had much less impact on the wetlands. Toward what Michael was saying, if you do that, creatures can get through without any real issue.
Point noted. We think that what we designed was in compliance with what's required by the act, but your board certainly has some say in that. So
Can you describe
certainly
that,
something we
Greg?
can take a look at.
So I didn't want to cut you off before you get too far. Can you just kind of describe what it is? 'Cause when you said, I think it's not clear what you're putting in there. You said you're to fill it in, but this looks like you have some sort of conduit running underneath the road. Can you describe what you mean when you say filling it in? And if you went through some sort of selection process, an open culvert versus these pipes or conduits?
Yeah, no, thank you. So we are proposing a culvert in there, actually two 12-inch diameter culverts. We did, again, do a stormwater analysis here, and we think that that's adequate to convey the flows that will be expected that come through that area. We're proposing two retaining walls on either side of the driveway to really contain the limits of that driveway, so we don't have the slope filling. And then we would propose a culvert through that stretch with a just a conventional roadway fill over the culvert. That's what's proposed. We can certainly look at other alternatives.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, Greg, from my perspective, I'd really like to see this conform with the mass stream crossing standards in terms of openness ratios and so on. My intuition says a 16-foot span with a 12-inch culvert is going to be fairly far off of compliance with those. And my ask, and I think we're hearing it from others, is one of our interests, one of our concerns is going to be the mobility of wildlife here. And mobility of wildlife isn't driven just by, is there a conduit? It's also driven by, is there an acceptable, from the salamander's perspective, pathway?
Okay.
And I think
Understood.
to the extent that
look at stream crossing standards. Yep.
Yeah, to the extent that you explore those, we'd really like to understand and see the calculations that support your, openness ratios and other elements of the stream crossing standards.
Yep. Okay. Understood.
Where you have a driveway going right down through wetlands and so close to it, how will you control ice melt and that type of thing, snow removal, fertilizer, and so on and so forth? Contaminants that will get into the wetlands.
Yeah, I mean, so we're finding a lot of commissions conditioning against salt removal and things. I'm not sure where your commission stands with that. Obviously, snow removal would be, we propose to do that in the same way you would, any other driveway with plowing. We'd develop snow banks on the edges. It does get tight as you go across that, so we may need to come up with some maybe in the O&M manual that can be linked and keyed into the project. Identify some snow storage areas, particularly in the sensitive areas near the wetlands. But that's a good question, and we can certainly address that.
Along those lines, Greg, we are, as a board, fairly skeptical of O&M plans that are implemented by individual property owners. And so
I can't blame you.
My ask of you is people comply with them better when there's infrastructure to support them. So for example, here I see, looks like you've got a bump out or a turnaround within the buffer area just on the, Plan West side of this. Things that we're going to ask you to think about are, let's not create a moral hazard of putting that within the buffer zone, right? Can that be moved outside of the buffer zone and provide the same safety and snow storage components? Or I'm not, I guess I'm assuming that's what that's for, but we're going to ask you to think about those pieces because we are very skeptical of individual property owners implementing O&M plans.
Can't say that I blame you.
You may change your tune when we're done with it.
Is the elevation on this fairly flat? Over where the house is, it's definitely not, but this looks relatively flat.
Yeah, the road, you're actually high, the elevation is higher at Beaverbrook Road, and then it obviously comes down as you get to the wetlands. The proposed grade at the culvert is elevation 266 roughly, and the grade at Beaverbrook Road is roughly elevation 270. So you're talking about 4 feet in almost 200 feet. So it's pretty mild slope coming down there.
But you're lending a conduit to whatever's put on Beaver Brook getting down into the wetlands. And a more easily accessible conduit than just it going through the ground and dirt and all that.
It does indeed slope down from Beaver Brook, yes.
So a lot of wetlands.
But we're pitching it, you know, we're of course cross sloping the road, so we'd be encouraging flow to, you know, sheet flow off the side of the driveway, not longitudinally, if you will.
As that flows north, I mean, I know that the areas north of there they're underwater right now, and I was wondering, you know, what the plan for the rain or the water control is in light of the fact that those areas are always underwater.
Yeah, well, our stormwater calcs, you know, look at everything up to and including the 100-year design frequency storm. So that's a fairly, you know, infrequent storm, albeit more frequent now than it was 20 years ago. But still, you're talking about a 7 or 8 inch rainfall in 24 hours that we're looking at. So, you know, we've our stormwater calculations have anticipated those sort of wet, infrequent storm events.
That said, Greg, one of the things I'm going to ask you to do here is also run this based on I don't think we can regulate on it entirely, but based on the proposed but not yet implemented 100-year storm intensity. Well, Mass DEP says they're going to get it out Q2 this year. I would really like to understand what the 90th percentile flow looks like, because what I don't want to do is create something that we have to come back to and modify the wetlands significantly because the storm intensity is way outside of what we designed.
Yep. Okay.
I'm going to pause for a second, Greg, just to make it clear. We're going to open up the discussion here simultaneously of 64 Beaverbrook Road, Lot 3, which is posted for 8 p.m. I don't think we need to derail our discussion because it's really touching on both of those, but to formally open that.
I can give you a brief 30-second narrative of what we're proposing for that if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that, Greg?
When you get past outside of the buffer zone, a lot of this flow will now come down and be conveyed. And I'm keenly aware here I have a lot of lines on this page. Let me see if I can clean this up a little bit. Sorry about that. We have proposed a swale right along this portion of the driveway here that comes down and will discharge into this stormwater management area down in the back of Lot 3. And that portion of the stormwater basin, just by necessity because of its elevation, is what is proposed primarily within the buffer zone area. We do have a small amount of breakout grading for the septic system in this location. The 100-foot buffer zone is this heavier dashed line. So I think our closest point in this location is about 75 feet. But the real we're proposing work essentially between 50, a little bit inside the 50, but essentially between 50 and 100 feet for that stormwater management basin. So that really just rounds out the rest of the work that we're proposing in the buffer zone on both of the projects.
let me touch on that 50-foot buffer zone impact, Greg. I think you're going to find that we're going to hold really firm on 50-foot no disturb. And what I would ask you to do is think about the waiver request for our local bylaw in two separate pieces, because I don't want them to necessarily get tied together. One is going to be the crossing, but the other is I think you need to make a separate argument for a waiver in the context of this stormwater basin. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I understand the property owner may want it out there, but I'm going to have a hard time finding the necessity of that until you explain it to me.
Okay, fair enough. We may be able to tweak that. I mean, we laid these things out, but we're not into the 50 feet very far, so we can certainly take a look at that too. But I understand what you're saying with the waiver request and separating those.
The bottom house looks pretty close to wetlands, and especially where it was already noted that the southern end was really wet. Where's the lines between that house and the wetlands to the south of it?
So you're talking about the lot one house here?
Yes.
So I don't believe there are any wetlands in this area offsite. I think the wetlands are confined over here. And like I said, I think there's a detention basin that's over in this area. This is essentially the back of the condo units in this location. So I think that the closest point to the wetland is that distance there. And I think that that's about 200 feet on that house.
That dashed line that you just had your mouse on?
This one right here?
That one, what is that?
That's the 100-foot buffer zone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how far are you? Okay.
It's about, if you can see, from
you're
from
out
this
of the
point,
100. That was all that.
yeah, out of the 100, and it's about another 100 feet to that house.
All right.
This one, the lot 3 house is a little bit closer. Here's the limit of the 100-foot buffer, so we're out of the buffer zone with the house, but we're closer on lot 3.
How are you planning to handle things like lawn, fertilizer, that type of thing?
I guess
Grass clippings and all that.
probably. I think the way I'd answer that is expecting that you'd have some thoughts on that with some conditions. We're again, just like I said with the salting. We know that there's most commissions are prohibiting fertilizers and things, certainly inside the buffer zone. So we're willing to follow the commission's lead on that.
Okay.
Head out there and take a look at this entire area, but can you kind of describe what existing conditions are maybe near that wetland crossing? And I don't think it'll matter too much up in that basin, but are we looking at like fully aged trees? Bushes?
It is a wooded area, and a matter of fact, that's one thing that I have to check on. Tim was nice enough to have a pre-meeting conference with us and gave us a laundry list of things to look at. One of his suggestions was to locate specific trees inside the buffer zone that we'd be taking. We have done that. We did it when we staked it. We just have not produced a plan for you. So we do have, and we'll be providing you with a species, surveyed inventory of the proposed trees that are particularly the ones that are in the buffer zone. Pretty much the entire site is wooded. So it's existing wood, developed woods, or mature woods, I'll call it.
We're pretty sensitive to how many trees, what trees, how you're going to care for the wildlife, the birds and squirrels and everybody else that lives in those trees. So. Yeah.
And so I think that was why it was in that spirit that Tim strongly suggested that we locate the specific trees. And I think if we, when we do that, we can have a more microscopic analysis on this. If there's a way we can tweak things to save a 24-inch oak tree, then let's do it, kind of thing. So that will be forthcoming. I apologize you don't have that tonight, but we have done the field work required to give you that information, which we'll be pulling together.
It's good to hear. Thank you. And thank you, Tim, for knowing us. And that's awesome.
And I guess, Greg, one thing to keep in mind there is that we've consistently expected replantings of trees that are taken. So my hope is that it's not just an inventory of what's to be removed, but also a proposed replanting.
Yeah, I think that was probably the second thing out of Tim's mouth when we had the call, was that you should inventory the trees and you should darn well propose mitigation. So we hear that loud and clear.
We taught you well, Tim.
There are a couple other things that I just want to flag here, Greg, as stuff that we're going to want to think about. One is, I think it would greatly help us if you could tabulate the areas of impact within the 50, within BVW, within the 50, and within the 0 to 50, and within the 50 to 100. Essentially, I imagine a table that says, right, can't remember what these are, lot 1 and lot 3, and then break it out in terms of BVW 0 to 50, 50 to 100 in terms of proposed disturbed areas.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can do that.
The other piece that will be helpful for us here is we're absolutely going to want to understand the ratio of compensatory wetland or reconstructed wetland relative to the area that is impacted. So another calculation that we're going to want to see.
We have that on the plan.
If it's on there and I missed it, I apologize.
Yeah, I know we have that somewhere. We're proposing to fill 622 square feet, and we're proposing a replication area of effectively 2 to 1, so 1,250 square feet.
I'm going to tell you right now, we've historically been pushing people to look at 3 to 1. And so to the extent that you want to, as a floor, by the way, that's just me speaking from experience, not necessarily what the commission will require, but historically 3 to 1 has been where we've started discussions. So,
okay.
We're coming up on our time here. Commissioners, any other really, I think, big, broad things? I'm sure we'll get into more details, but broad direction for Greg and his client?
I would ask they seriously think not filling those wetlands. 10 feet is definitely able to be handled in better ways.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Any other comments, or should we get to scheduling a site walk?
That's where I was going. Yeah, agree.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Greg, let me start with this question. It sounds like things are marked out there, but based on this discussion, do you anticipate you need to mark anything else out there before we do a site walk, or you think you're ready to rock and roll?
I think we're ready to go.
Okay.
I think we're ready to go. We did that. We did that work, and I think we tried to be err on the side of more stakes. So hopefully it's not confusing.
But to be clear, the things we're at a minimum we're going to want to see are just confirm that you've got these, the alignment of the road, the limits of work, probably the corners of the houses, the BVW delineations, those all.
Yep. I think we staked that's exactly what we did. We did the center line of the driveway in the buffer zone. We did the limits of the buffer zones. We did the limit of work. We did the limit of work through the buffer zones in all areas, and we staked the houses. So I think that's what we got.
Okay.
So I think we should be in good shape.
Who wants to propose a time to do this site walk?
Sure, there is a good time.
Well, I can walk to this site walk, so pretty much any time.
Yeah, for me, it's just got to be outside work hours is all.
Yeah, we've got some daylight to work with right now.
We do.
We'll make sure someone's there, guys. So we'll I'm sure it's going to be harder for you guys to schedule it, so we'll work around you.
Kyle, any particularly good or bad times? Tim?
I can make afternoons work. generally speaking.
I'm pretty flat out until next Wednesday. Is there any possibility that we could do it on Thursday, the 22nd at like 4:30 p.m.? Ed, would that work for you? Is that outside of work hours enough to make it work?
I think I might be able to do that. What day, the 21st, you said?
22nd is what I proposed.
Yeah, I can do that.
Michael, Kyle,
Yeah,
Tim,
that works for
any
me.
objections there?
I think that works for
That
me.
works for me.
I'll see what I can do to get there. I'll see. We have to try to get something moved.
Okay.
Don't schedule around just me. If you have 4 or 5 people that can do it right now, do it.
Greg, what I'd like to do is let's tentatively plan it for next Thursday, the 22nd at 4:30 p.m.
Okay.
The reason I say tentative is we're only 4 of 7 members tonight. So to the
Okay,
extent that we find out that none of those other 3 members are available, we may come back to you and your client, but I imagine we can do that via email.
Fair enough.
Hey,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Greg.
Well,
I was going to change topics real quick.
I wanted to suggest if you were gonna be entertaining continuances, that I think we probably should not waste your time for 2 weeks. I think that we should probably go for a month out.
Okay. We'll certainly entertain that and accept that request for continuance for a month. I do want to pause here. We have a number of attendees in the waiting room, and I want to make sure that we give folks an opportunity to raise their hand if they do have questions, given that this is a public hearing. Okay, looks like nobody's raising their hand. Okay, I think that concludes it for tonight. We'll get the site walk. Tim, you'll coordinate on having the peer review done on our behalf as well. I think to the extent that you can convey some of these concerns to the peer reviewer or some of our thoughts, that would be very helpful.
Sure.
In this context. And then we'll see you, Greg, in a month. Well, I guess we'll see you in a week and a half, but then.
Yes, no, thank you. And I appreciate it. I know it was high level, but I do appreciate the discussion. That gives us some real good guidance here, and we'll be back with some revisions in response to those comments. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on. It's 8:19. We're only 4 minutes behind so far. We're going to move on to the public hearing notice of intent for Blood Road. We still have this one, right, Tim?
Yes, we do. I'm promoting Brian right now.
And guys, I'm still on here. So this involves the light department. So I can give a quick intro while Brian's jumping on.
I saw you were still here, Dave. I through you were just entertained by our board meeting.
No, it is a good meeting. But I've got the 97 Mill Road as well. So
okay.
For the end of it, but just real quickly on this project before Brian gets into it fully. So Blood Road here, National Grid obviously has their transmission lines headed through the right of way directly over Blood Road. We've got some distribution overhead utility equipment on Blood Road that sort of cuts off a corner of Blood Road and goes directly under National Grid's transmission lines. And there's a little mound that National Grid can drive up on and access their transmission lines closer. And our poles go up and over that mound. So they had asked us to remove those poles because they don't meet their clearances and they're doing some work in that area. So that's sort of how this project spawned. And then also in fixing that issue, there's one other really hard couple of poles that go through the swamp actually, and Brian will get into that further there, that we're trying to pull out. That they're always causing us power outages. They're really hard to access, and it's a big safety concern for us. So with that being said, I'll pass it over to Brian if he's on. Oh, yeah, there he is.
Hey, Brian.
Great. All right, so Brian Marchetti here with McCarty Engineering on behalf of Littleton Electric Light Department. So he just laid it out pretty straightforward for us here. There's about 900 linear feet of overhead power that passes through a wooded area, through a wetland area, and as he says, is almost impossible to access And it's been an area that's been problematic. So we're looking to relocate that. I do have my plans here on my screen if I can share them.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Brian, because there's a lot going on these plan
Yeah,
sets.
I'm struggling to read them today to get a grasp on what was going on.
So, all right. So, anyway, so initially we looked at this. The ideal location is what's shown here on the plan. Utility pole 5 here is basically right off the edge of Blood Road, and that's where the transmission line runs through the woods. So it's this orange line here, goes from utility pole 5 to 6, 7, 8, and 9. This is the area where there's a perennial stream that runs through here. That's the dashed blue line you see here. So it crosses a perennial stream through that resource area and through the wetland buffer zone. So ideally, we'd like to remove utility poles 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then here, utility pole number 10 and 11. This is where the Littleton Electric Light Department transmission line runs underneath the National Grid overhead high tension wires. So these 2 poles in the utility is what National Grid would like us to remove as well. So basically, we need to relocate here between utility pole 5 and then down here at utility pole number 13. So there's about 900 feet of overhead that we're looking to relocate underground here, which is the big green dashed line here. So initially, we started this project. I contacted Tim in an attempt to file this as a limited project. Limited project does allow public utilities to do work within the shoulders of the roadway for a project just like this. However, a couple aspects of this project were kind of gray, where we had to go off the shoulder of the road. So right here in the corner, in order to make this turn on the roadway, New England or Littleton Light needs to have basically they're not manhole structures. They're fiberglass, smaller structures like 30-foot square structures that'll be in the ground that we'll be able to access for maintenance and for pull boxes. We'll need both electric and telecommunications in the corners here. So although we're not in the wetlands, we're off the shoulder of the roadway. And some of this work is also requiring tree clearing. They're off the shoulder of this roadway. There are 14 locations where there are trees that will need to be removed in order to, because we'll be trenching right through basically the root mass. So right here at the corner, we're going to have a couple structures for electric and telecommunications in the ground. And then right at about this location, because it's 1,400 linear foot run, we'll need a couple locations in order to pull the conduit through that run of trench. So in addition to that impact that's off the shoulder of the roadway, right here, there's an existing 36-inch culvert that crosses underneath Blood Road. It's a 36-inch reinforced concrete pipe. In order to cross that, we're just going to trench up to it and then extend the conduit underneath it. This is not a exposed surface stream. This is all enclosed within the conduit, the 36-inch pipe. So we'll be able to dig up to that 36-inch conduit or 36-inch RCP pipe on both sides and pass the conduit beneath it and then backfill. So it's a minor impact. We won't be touching any open stream. We're passing the conduit underneath and then backfilling. So that is the scope of work here. We're showing here the trench. It's 3 feet deep, about 3 feet wide, 43 inches total depth below the trench. So we'll have 2 electrical conduit. Then we'll have, I believe it's Verizon and Comcast telecommunications conduits also installed within the same trench. And we are proposing here a straw wattle and silt fence that'll be run along the northern boundary of the trench along the full 1,400 foot linear foot run. So all the excavation will be taking place on the roadway side of that silt fence. I had a second plan here that I want to show. Just location wise of where the trees are. So we have a total of 10 photos here. And in each photo, I showed a location of the tree and which trees will need to be removed. And then as mitigation for that, we're proposing to replant the same 14 trees in the same locations or approximate locations. We don't want to put them directly back in place next to the trench that we're installing now, so that there's an issue in the future with roots growing through the conduit. So we're basically proposing either having the trees in the same location, 5-10 feet away, or in the vicinity of, like over here in the corner, there's a lot more room between where the actual the trench is and the pole boxes will be to locate those trees outside of the footprint of the right of way, within the wooded area, but outside the wetland. So that's the full scope here. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. In this plan, we did have, just for your comfort, we did have Three Oaks Environmental go out and flag the entire extent of this work. So the wetland flags are out there. They weren't survey located because of the scope and proximity of the work to the shoulder of the road. However, they are all a minimum 10 feet plus off the shoulder of the roadway from our limit of work. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
A couple of resource area delineation questions before we get into this. Tim, are we looking at both BVW and riverfront area here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And so we are sound like 10 feet outside of BVW with this trench? Is that?
Yeah, at the minimum, like the minimum distance we have is about 10 feet, and that would be up in this corner here.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh, okay. I see. The BVW line is the red line. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have the 100-foot buffer line is the red line, and then our riverfront area is the yellow.
Okay. Commissioners, what comments and questions do you all have?
Are you leaving the old poles in place? Are you going to dig them out? What's the situation there?
So the current plan for the old poles is, we'd like to remove the poles. We're not going to pull them out of the ground. They can be cut with a chainsaw at grade, and they can drag them out of the woods with a cable. So there'll be no heavy machinery driving into the woods or the resource areas to get them.
Dragging them is going to do some damage to the surrounding land.
It could, but it's dragging them over land. It's very, very minimal, and there won't be any tracking of machines.
Okay.
Very close.
What I might suggest there, Brian, is that you include a note in your plan that says any disturbed areas will be reseeded with, an appropriate wetland or upland mix as necessary.
And I'm sure we're willing to accept any conditions like that you'd like to put on this.
We should probably go back to the tree list.
Sure.
I appreciate that you have located and identified the trees that aren't going to survive. But from our point of view, well, it looks like you're proposing to replace in the same number, but not in kind. Is that right? So,
same number, but we won't be able to plant, 8-inch diameter trees out there.
Right. So I guess our view of that usually is we can't really justify cutting down a 24-inch tree and replacing it with a 2-inch tree and calling it even, or calling it a square. So we usually are looking for some sort of ratio similar to what we would do with wetland replication, 2-to-1, 3-to-1, or other species, other types of plantings, something that is a little bit more justifiable than cutting down a 24-inch mature tree and replacing it with a 2-inch tree that might survive, might not survive.
Do you have, I guess, having the regulations or a protocol or something that we can follow? So, we're not just, shooting from the hip.
Yep. Tim, we have guidelines for that, right? Or did you provide Dillis and Roy something, or was that just vocal? I thought we had.
No, it was local. I just noted that they didn't have trees located in their plan that they were proposing to remove. So I mentioned that you guys would probably want a list of,
Don't we have do we have guidance somewhere? Don't we, Chase? I could have sworn Amy has referenced that in the past. I know we have a policy in place yet.
Yeah, not, I think, detailed technical guidance on quantitative metrics, but I could be wrong on that.
I know we were working on a tree replacement thinking. But yeah, as Cal said, you're taking down a 4 potentially 12-inch trees, and you're going to put 4 little babies. And I'm assuming the plan will have a 2-year follow-through or follow-up or whatever the words are to make sure they stay alive.
Yeah, it's typically in your rotary conditions. Yeah, where this isn't wetland mitigation or replication, it may be different, and also I just for us to consider this, the property where this is taking place is not owned by Littleton Electric Light and Water Department. So I guess quantities and location of this is all farmland. So whatever we do put back, really can't inhibit first of all, the utility that's being put in the ground, but also, the operations of the farm and the farmer and the ability to kind of pass and repass this roadway, because this road is used heavily by residents, at the end of Blood Road.
Yep. Yeah, and we've worked with with engineers and with clients in the past on workarounds or how we can manage that. The water department has done it. They've planted trees off site.
Yep.
At different locations to help verify or justify that. And it's just something that will probably come up again.
Okay, but that's fine. I'm sure they're not disagreeable to it. There was a lot of discussion about this with the landowner, and this was one of the sticky points they came up with. That he's allowing this work on his property, but it can't be kind of further hindered and to his farming operations out here. So
and Brian,
offsite mitigation would be welcome.
One of the things that we've found success with is not necessarily just like a 3-to-1 ratio of replanting to what's taken, but being able to meet some of that compensation of what's being removed with, let's say, shrubs. Like the idea that this area is, some of it is sort of bordering on forest land. If you wanted to plant blueberry bushes in the wetland areas and so on, these are things that we have historically found to be acceptable in lieu of just planting gobs of trees. But it's also, to be clear, it's not 24-inch tree equals 1 2-inch tree and a blueberry bush, right? Like we want to make sure that we are doing what we can to compensate for the removal of certain ecosystems.
Okay. Is that something that, I guess, Tim, we can kind of work together between now and the next meeting to make sure, we're coming back with something satisfactory?
Yeah, I can definitely provide you my thoughts on it.
Okay. Couple other comments I had here. I don't think you're challenged with respect to a waiver, but I don't think I saw a waiver. And I think for the sake of completing the file, we very much want to make sure that we complete a waiver for work in the 50. Your argument for this being in the public interest is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
This also doesn't have a DEP number yet?
No, it doesn't. I tried to get it. You can only pester them so much, but they don't get back to you.
Yeah, that doesn't do you any good. Couple other things that I want to address here as we're thinking about this, Brian, that I do want to see on a revised plan. If you're digging would you say a 3-foot deep trench here?
Yes. Yep.
You're going to have a fair amount of spoils. I'd like to understand how those spoils will be managed. I assume they're going to go back in the hole, but even while they're temporarily outside of the hole, what we don't want to do is, what I would like to see is you identify locations where you will store spoils and how you will do that if you need to, let's say, have spoils stored more than through the duration of a workday, right?
Okay.
Like, let's say you dig 100 feet of trench. Where's that going to go for the week that you're working in that 100 feet of trench?
Yeah. The
my
way
mind-
it was kind of explained to me, and, David, you may be able to add on to this, but, whatever they excavate and trench for the day, they install the conduit, it'll be backfilled and compacted. So Blood Road has to remain open for the residents here. So it's not going to be, it's not going to be the type of construction project that the excavation pile is going to be left on the side of the road and in the way.
Correct. As long as the material is suitable to
Backfill.
backfill.
Yeah, so I would say there's two things there. One, it needs to be suitable to get put back in there, and then two, if I don't have it in front of me now, but your utility trench isn't just excavate and replace fill. You're putting in conduits and everything. I assume there's sand or some sort of either stone or sand going around that, right? So you're going to lose half of your trench volume or a third of your trench volume.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go, sand cover, right?
Yeah.
So
We do have room for spoils at the lead water department. Just our normal spoil location.
How you guys want to manage that is on you. I just
Come back with a plan.
Yeah, I want a plan, and if the plan is there will be no spoils, that's got to be not just a plan, that's got to be an ironclad requirement in the specs for the contractor.
Yeah.
And even then, I'd like to see a contingency for if we need to, we'll surround it with a straw wattle and we'll keep it.
or even a location too, not just
Yeah.
I want to see where it's going to be within surrounded by straw wattles. That's the big difference.
So, I mean, is that something we can handle just with notes on the plan? Because if the spoils are going to be, like temporarily over here in the sandy area or something, we can show that with a detail for a wattle surrounding it, but we can cover most of that in notes.
That's fine with me. I just want to make it really clear to the contractor who's doing this work what is acceptable. And the same is going to be true in reverse, given the amount of sand that you guys have here. I'm going to imagine you're not necessarily going to be able to just live fill with that. So think about what's going in and what's coming out.
Based on the picture you showed, there's going to be a lot of dirt or whatever ending up elsewhere.
Lastly, and we're this hearing's getting a little long in the tooth in terms of the directional drilling underneath the culvert. I know, Kyle, you've got more experience with directional drilling than the rest
Yeah,
of us.
we're not directional drilling.
I was going to say, wait, that sounds very
No,
new.
there's no
they're just
directional
gonna,
drilling required.
They're just going to
yeah.
line the bottom of the culvert, right? They'll dig up
Yeah.
to the culvert and then just attach it to the culvert. Is that my
Oh,
understanding?
okay.
That's not what I thought I heard is come up to the culvert, dig underneath the culvert, however big that is, and I assume with shovels and pole or something like that.
Yes. Yep, you'll be able to use the excavator to trench basically up to it, underneath it and cross over. It's these sections of a 36-inch RCP pipe, they're 8 to 10 feet long each. So the earth supporting the rest of that culvert is going to hold it in place. There's no need to directional drill or shore it or do anything special with that. They'll dig on both sides of it, pass the conduit underneath, and backfill around it.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think you've gotten some direction from us. And given that we don't have a Mass DEP file number, we're not closing this tonight anyway. So if you could come back with those revisions, be prepared to speak to the revisions. Commissioners, do you all see a need for a site walk here? Or are you comfortable with just a plan review?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. The wetlands are what they are. We're right up against it, right? I don't see. Like we're flirting with a 50-foot line here.
I don't think it substantively changes anything. But
No, exactly. I don't think I need to see it.
It's not much that they can do differently anyway, it seems.
that's generally my thought as well. Very good.
what would be the next hearing we'd be able to attend? What's the date?
The 27th is the next one.
So Brian, you want to be on for the 27th?
Please, yes.
Okay.
I'm meeting with DEP on Thursday on another project, so I will make sure I beg and plead for a number.
Let us know if you figure out a way to get him to give you a number.
You know, if you email them and call them enough, it actually works half the time.
Yeah, but then the list of comments you get is twice as long.
Advantage is if they cashed your check, but this is a municipal project, so there's no checks changing hands. So, yeah.
Very good. Okay, we're going to move on then to our next hearing. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I've lost our agenda.
The next item is 8:30 p.m. amended order of condition Forge Pond.
Yep, we've got Dave here to speak to that.
Okay. Hey, Dave.
Hi. Would you like me to frame our request?
Yes, please.
Okay. So in the last few years, the amount of invasive plant growth in Lake Maniwaki Forge Pond has increased significantly. A number of lifelong residents on the lake have said that they've never seen plant growth, plant density as high as this. We have been consistently using drawdowns, winter drawdowns in the last 10 years or so, and have been modestly successful with that. Normally, in the last few years, with warmer winters, they have not been as successful for reasons that are outlined in the narrative. We got approval to do physical harvesting a couple years ago, and we have for the last 2 summers attempted to do what's called eco harvesting, where the plants are pulled out, not cut out, but pulled out and put into a hopper and removed from the lake. The first of those 2 times, we were constrained in how much we could do by a limited budget and a delayed permitting, largely because of the time it took to get responses from Natural Heritage. Last summer, we had our permits, but we were also delayed in being able to do it because other lakes in town needed permits, and the vendor was not willing to come and do this lake and then come back and do the other lake. The biggest constraint last year, though, was that DEP decided that physical harvesting needed to be treated as dredging, and so they limited how much could be removed to 100 cubic yards, which was considerably less than we had funding for, and was considerably less than we were than the lake needed. We have funding this year for a larger eco harvesting treatment. We were starting to get the dredging permit last fall, but we were told by DEP that we couldn't start the process until this spring, which means that we're not going to be able to get the permit until after this summer season. So we won't be able to do that this summer. So what we are intending to do is to, for the first time in the last recent past, try to implement a herbicide treatment this year to reduce the level of invasive plants in the lake and to improve our chances of having being very successful at doing eco harvesting treatment next year. So that is the main request here for the amendment, is to approve the use of herbicides for that. We're also asking for approval to do diver-assisted suction harvesting, which was formally approved in the last amendment, but the request was that if we were going to actually use diver-assisted suction harvesting, we would come back and request it. And we're seeing that as a process that could be helpful in places where plant growth is very high and there's specific more of a hardship. Like, for instance, we were planning to do a DASH, it's called DASH, diver-assisted suction harvesting, treatment over at Forge Beach this summer to open up the beach a bit more, and it could potentially be used along some waterfronts, as previously was done for hydro raking. We're not in favor of hydro raking now because it creates a lot of fragments, and this wouldn't. There are specific advantages to diver-assisted. The roots can be pulled out, the plants can be more selectively removed, and so it's more effective and more selective, but it is more expensive, so it would only be practical on smaller areas. But so we actually can't use that this year, again, because DEP has decided that that also qualifies supposedly as dredging. So we'll have to wait for a dredging permit to be able to use it. But since we're going through the whole process of amending, we thought it made sense to do this at the same time.
Thank you, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, what questions, comments, concerns do we have here?
Dave, you mentioned that in your submittal.
You provided this to NHESP. Did they have any comments?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that. So we submitted once we got the approval from Westford Conservation Commission to approach this as an amendment, we submitted the narrative to Natural Heritage, and that was April 4th. It was before we got approval from Littleton Conservation Commission to do it, but we knew we at least had approval from Westford, so we wanted to get it into Natural Heritage as soon as possible, because they are allowed to take 30 days, and they, pretty much say they will take 30 days. So that was April 4th. That was 39 days ago. Last week I got in touch with them again. Oh, and they confirmed, they acknowledged that they received it, and they said they'd have a response back within the month. I reached out to them last week, and after the 30 days was had passed, informed them that we were meeting with you tonight, and Westford again tomorrow night, and asked them if we could have their response in time for that. And their answer was, it's on our list. We will, you'll have to wait for the 30 days in order to get our response. And I replied that it's already been 30 days, and actually it doesn't show up on their website where they show their deadlines for responding to these things. And I pointed that out too, and we haven't heard response back from them yet, which is frustrating.
You said So
I heard kind of two different things there. Westford has given you approval, but you're meeting with them again tomorrow.
we had one hearing with them, and we're meeting with them tomorrow. The expectation was that they would write up their order of conditions and review it, and then we would have the natural heritage response back by tomorrow, and they were inclined to approve it, but they wanted to have the orders of conditions in hand to review before the meeting. So we're meeting with them again tomorrow, and I'll reach out to Natural Heritage again tomorrow, and it doesn't seem like it would be an issue for them. Everything is flowing downstream. The only endangered area is upstream of the lake. None of this is going to affect that like the drawdown does. And so ideally we could get a response from them tomorrow, and but that's where that stands,
Dave, this is the first time I've seen any request, and you didn't mention it all in your discussion, to apply algicides. And that to me is a fundamentally different component than herbicides to deal with woody plants and leaf plants. How do algicides fit into the existing order of conditions that was really intended to deal with vegetation, not algae growth? And how is that not something that requires a new order of conditions?
It's the herbicides are used for both the vascular plants and the algae plants, and we very rarely have had algae blooms on Lake Metawanaki. There has been, I think, one in the last decade and a half. Very rare, but the request here was if we have conditions where an algae bloom is likely to occur, we wouldn't have time, obviously, to go through the process of requesting permit to do it and all that we're going through now. So the request was to include that in the state approved herbicides also include two that are generally used for algae, the copper complexes and the peroxyhydrate and hydrogen peroxide. And we're requesting them so that they are available if we need them. It's again dealing with the vegetation in the lake.
I tell you guys, I respect that Westford is willing to entertain this as an amended order of conditions. And listen, I'm happy to lose a 3-1 vote. I'm disinclined to do so. To fundamentally, not just for the algicides, Dave, from the perspective of what was approved in the order of conditions were physical processes. We are now going down the direction of chemical processes, and it's my opinion that should be handled as a fundamentally different impact to the resource area. And I'm putting that out there. I think that is the threshold issue in front of us, and I'd like to hear from other members of the commission about their appetite to go forward with this as a amended order of conditions versus a new order of conditions for herbicides and algicides. Kyle, Ed, Michael, do you guys have thoughts on the distinction?
If he made it a separate, what would we put differently than we would if we were just amending this one? How would we treat it differently?
Just off the top of my head, notification requirements, dosing requirements, in my mind, to physically remove material doesn't necessarily require that the entire community, let's say, might want to know about that. But to apply chemicals to the water, it seems like things that might have a different bar for notification.
Sure.
That's just me shooting from the hip. Again, I'm willing, as always, maybe that's patronizing to say, be overruled here, but I see them as different things.
The notification and the chemical aspect of it, I see where you're coming from there. I'm always nervous about chemicals with the fish and other wildlife. Everybody says not going to bother them; they're all set; they can survive it. But that part of it, But I could get on board with a separate because of the notification aspect of it. I could consider that.
Kyle, 1 second, Dave. Kyle, Michael, do you guys have any thoughts on this distinction? Because this is a threshold question in front of us before we get to do we approve the revised order of conditions.
Chase, I actually need to recuse myself from this discussion as an abutter.
Ah, okay.
So, not to really muddy the waters here, then we don't have quorum for this.
Yeah, we can't take a vote. I think we can still, and I'm not sure we would take a vote anyway without Natural Heritage weighing in, but we can't take a vote. But nonetheless, Kyle, I think I'm going to put you on the spot to weigh in here.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where you're coming from with the distinction, chemical versus mechanical, and I hadn't really thought too much. I wanted to see this, I think, from Dave when we met last week. It was last meeting was much more high level, and this is I want to see more. I see the lists, I can use them, that's great, and I'm comfortable with the use. I've sat in on plenty of the agriculture meetings and listened to them and shown the case studies and the ongoing long-term projects that they've been working and the results. So I'm comfortable with the usage of them. I don't know if there's enough detail in here on which ones are they all going to be applied, dosaging, time of year, like sort of scheduling of all of that. So if that's what if it's a newer condition chase that would get that out and clear, then that makes sense to me. I guess I thought that might have been something we could do with an amended condition and just with conditions.
Sure, you would just add conditions to the amendment. Okay.
Yeah.
Jace, did you also have a concern about this setting a precedent going forward that we would blend physical and chemical together on order of conditions?
Before we get into that, and I don't want to cut you guys off, but without Michael and not having quorum, we really shouldn't even be having discussions. We should open, close, continue this to the next meeting so we do not have to re-notify all the abutters.
Okay. We'll take your advice, Tim. Dave, apologies for not identifying that sooner. We are going to have to continue this for 2 weeks. Hopefully that's on Natural Heritage. Dave, I'm going to try and be wise here and take Tim's advice to just move on, because we really can't.
We shouldn't be having these discussions.
Have this as a hearing.
So,
Dave, to the extent that you have comments, what you're welcome to do is send us an email on those. But I'm going to end this hearing right now because we're going to extend it for 2 weeks. We would love to have your thoughts in email, though.
I just feel bad that you put all that out there and I don't get a chance to respond.
And you're welcome to. You're welcome to via email or the next meeting.
And we have to wait anyway, Dave, because we have National Heritage we have to wait for. So
I understand that.
Okay.
It just gives 2 weeks for this to sit there like that.
It does, but Dave,
Yeah, I
administratively,
completely
there's literally nothing we can do. So,
I'm sure, especially, I'm not excited to have, like, as much as I enjoy seeing you, Dave, I don't want to have to do this every 2 weeks either. So it's, I think I'm just as frustrated as you right now. So.
Okay. Well,
So I will mention that our funding.
Dave, I don't want to have to ask LCTV to cut you off. We're done with this hearing. We're going to move on to the next one. Okay. We'll see you in 2 weeks, though, and we'll confirm that we have a quorum with everyone who can participate. So, apologies.
Can you just say that this is continued, and we will reopen this at the May 27th meeting?
That's correct. Thank you, Tim. This discussion regarding an amended order of conditions for Forge Pond is continued for 2 weeks.
Appreciate it.
Take care, Dave. Okay, we're going to move to the 8:45 public hearing, notice of intent, 65 Bruce Street, Mass DEP file number 204-1016, construction of addition and installation of a septic system.
We've got John Boardman here to talk to that. I'm promoting him right now.
Very good. Thank you. Hey, John, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can.
Super.
Okay, John, sorry we're running 15 minutes late here, but the floor is yours to give us an update here.
Yep, no, I appreciate it. So I'm here on behalf of the Miller family tonight. We wanted to talk about an addition and a new septic system located at 65 Bruce Street. I'm going to share my screen, if that's all right.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, we'll go to that one. How does that work? So first off, I've just got a map up here. If you were taking Bruce Street from 2A to heading towards...
John, can I cut you off for a second? Are you sharing your screen via the Zoom app? If you are, we can't see it.
Yeah. Let's try one more time. Share.
There we go.
There we go.
Right. I got a whole bunch of different things up, but so I can hopefully answer any questions.
We can see you now.
May or may not have. But we're on Bruce Street. If you were heading from 2A towards Harvard Road, we're on the right-hand side, shortly before you get to the big farm over there, just to get you orientated in town. Does that make sense to most people?
Yes, sir.
All right. Quick orientation on the site. I got a site plan here. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. So on the right-hand side of the plan is Bruce Street. The driveway is a gravel driveway that comes onto the site and is basically a horseshoe and continues back out onto Bruce Street. We have an existing 3-bedroom dwelling shown here in the brown. The property slopes from the street to the back. There is a bordering vegetated wetlands shown here with the blue line. It was delineated by William Murray from Places Associates there in Littleton. We also show here in the orange the 50-foot buffer zone, which is your no disturb buffer, and the 100-foot buffer zone here, closer out to the street. As you can see, basically the entire property, or almost the entire property, is located within the buffer zone to the resource area. We've sort of got two parts to this project that's in front of you. There's an existing septic system located here. If you can see my, I'll highlight, you can see my outline. That system, I believe, is original to the house. It's about 30 years old and it's tired. And as part of this process, we're looking to install a new septic system located in this area over here. To comply with your regulations and the Board of Health regulations, we have proposed a retaining wall that will keep any activity associated with that septic system out of your 50-foot no disturb. We have been in front of the Littleton Board of Health and they have approved the plan for this. So hopefully this is something that makes sense. We're proposing erosion control, and in this case I've got a standard straw wattle detail that would start at the house, follow the edge of the existing lawn and the tree line, and then along the limit of construction, and back out to the 100-foot buffer zone so that this system could be constructed. Also, as part of this project, the family is looking to add an addition onto the right-hand side of the property if you are facing it from the street. This addition is a 2-car garage with living space above. And that is part of the reason that we end up with a new septic system, because it's an increase in the number of bedrooms. And if you're following Board of Health regulations, that needs to meet all the new standards. So this system is in full compliance with both Title V and the Littleton regulations. I do have, let me see if I can pull it up. This area right now. So this is standing down near the wetlands, looking at where that garage and living space is going to be. Right now, there's an existing retaining wall, and that area is utilized to park 2 vehicles. And then if I can find the right screen. If you were looking at it from the street, with the existing house on the left, you would end up with a 2-car garage and that living space above. So basically, we're utilizing roughly that existing footprint, eliminating the gravel parking, eliminating that retaining wall, replacing it with a concrete wall that would support the proposed addition to give additional living space, and then you would have the 2 cars parked interior to the building. I'm happy to go through additional details or answer any questions. You guys are having a late evening, so I figured I would keep it pretty short and sweet and see where you wanted to go.
Appreciate that brevity, John. Let me start with Tim. Tim, have you taken a look at this delineation yet?
I have not been out to the site yet, no.
Okay.
The delineator is again William Murray. He's from Places Associates right there in Littleton. He's a wetland scientist, landscape architect, and planner. He's been doing this for many years throughout central Massachusetts. So I'm very, very confident in the line. But I'm again happy to show it to anybody that would like to take a walk and take a look at it.
Yeah, I think for the purposes of this discussion right now, John, we're going to go forward assuming that line is the line, but at some point we'll want our agent to go take a look at it and confirm it.
We did submit the appropriate documentation because this addition is within your 50-foot no build. So we did fill out the waiver application. In my mind, it's the overall project is an improvement. You're taking what used to be gravel parking and has the potential to provide TSS loading or contamination to the wetlands area. You're replacing it with roof runoff, which under the stormwater management policy is considered clean. And in addition, you're taking an existing tired septic system that is within your 50-foot buffer zone, and we're replacing it with a new system that is as far away as possible outside that 50-foot and meets all of today's standards for size, location, treatment. So I think we've got a couple of benefits here in terms of that waiver request, and it provides the ability to expand the property for the millers who need the additional space. So.
Hey, commissioners, what comments, questions do you all have?
You covered part of it. The wetlands line goes right smack through the house and the addition. So what is the water runoff plan?
The 50-foot buffer zone runs right through the building, yes.
So you have drains or dry well, or what's the plan for the water coming off the roof of the addition?
We don't have any additional stormwater management proposed at this point. We can work with you if you feel that that's something that's necessary. We're taking an area that is existing compacted gravel, which if you do the stormwater calcs is typically a CN of 98. We're changing it to a roof runoff, which is a similar runoff rate of that 98. So I don't anticipate additional stormwater volume entering the wetlands based on this. And as I mentioned, you know, your TSS from gravel has potential for erosion and potential for contaminants. Getting those vehicles in the garage and just getting clean roof runoff, I think you've got a benefit here without anything additional. So,
John, I'm not sure I agree with you on that gravel is functionally impervious. that we're not typically seeing stormwater models that are treating gravel with curb numbers in 98. Right? It's significant, right? 80 to 90, but I'm not sure we've seen a stormwater model that's tried to treat gravel as fully impervious.
It's generally pretty compact and material. So yeah, I suppose there might be a slight increase if you'd like to look at it that way. But I still think there's benefits to the proposed plan. Getting that septic system further away. I don't think we have any substantial increase from that small footprint that's being installed there. If the commission was interested in requiring a dry well or something along those lines, I think we'd be happy to consider it. If that's our lone hurdle here, that's a small one.
Are you taking the old septic out?
The system would typically be pumped during construction, and in this case, the new septic tank and the pump chamber are actually going to intersect where the existing system is. So the majority of it's going to be taken out after it's pumped. Some of that area that's further, that's closer and in the lawn would simply be allowed to stay in place. And what happens over time is the effluent that is in among the stones simply deteriorates. And if you were to dig in it in 10 or 15 years, it would look like rocks with some soil mixed in. So there's really no need to whole scale excavate. But in this particular case, they're going to be working in among it. So that, yeah, portions of it will be removed.
Can we come back to the stormwater thing for a second?
Sure.
I think that was an important discussion, but our bylaw requires, in addition to the 50-foot no disturb zone, that any expansion in the buffer zone of more than 1,000 square feet or 5% is subject to the mass stormwater standards. Is that something you've considered here, John?
I have not. I can certainly take a look at it. I looked at it as exchanging one thing for another. And again, if you feel that we want to provide gutters on the back of this addition into a dry well or some form of infiltration, happy to provide it. Again, if that's the main concern the commission has here at this point.
Can I suggest we take these in two different pieces? So first, let's talk about the septic system to the south. Is north up? Let's go with south. The septic system to the south, because I think there may be different considerations here from the commission. Good. Commissioners, in general, what issues or concerns do you have there? Questions that we need John and his clients to answer?
I have is material handling of materials, stockpiles. I'd like to see an area called it. It looks like the entire property's in the 100-foot buffer here, right? So if material is leaving site every day, or what the plan is for that control containment.
So we're looking at stockpile areas. We're looking at erosion controls of those stockpile areas.
Yeah, I would anticipate clearing and grubbing, and you would end up with the stumps and the materials all being hauled off site. And loam and top and subsoil being removed for the excavation of the system. And again, probably being hauled off site, being given the limited space that we've got on this property. Construction of the retaining wall, and then import of materials to create that system in place. I agree, there's very limited space that's available on site, considering the family is also going to be living there. So I don't see a lot of material being stored on site. Obviously, I think day to day you'll end up with some stockpiles adjacent to the work area. Those are all, again, north or upstream of the erosion control barrier that we're proposing. So I don't think there'd be any concern about it washing down into the wetlands. But you're right, it's a tight site, and I think most of the material is going to head off site during the construction process.
I'm totally comfortable with that. But saying that to us and having a contractor do it without it being on a plan, I feel like it's a very different case. So it's something that, with these types of sites, I personally like to see called out on a plan. Show that location in that outside the 100-foot like you had shown, and a note saying surrounded by a straw wall, whatever your erosion control usage is going to be, just so it's there.
Your septic is bigger than the previous one, obviously, because you're putting in additional bedrooms. How much additional effluent, if that's the right word, do we anticipate from it, because it's going to be feeding to the wetlands eventually? It's so close to it.
Well, looks like we might have lost John here.
Oops.
I imagine that effluent is still better than what was coming out of the previous system, right? I'm sure the volume. Well, I don't know if the volume would increase if it a more efficient, cleaner system.
Well, if it's in tough shape, you may be right that.
Right. That's why just the benefit I think outweighs the even if it is a slight increase in clean effluent.
Yeah.
I think their other consideration, and we can repeat this when John gets back, is that entire southern portion of the property is forested. And we're going to want to understand the extent of the tree clearing there.
Which he isn't going to be able to put back because of the septic.
I believe that is probably right. But one of my questions for John and his client is, are they essentially proposing to turn that entire area into lawn? Or are they what's the scope of everything there?
Yeah, fair question. So how do we proceed where John is falling off and maybe having trouble getting back on?
Let's do this. Let's keep that hearing open. We'll see if John comes back. If he does, we can reopen that discussion because we haven't closed it out. But then we can move on simultaneously to the next item on our agenda. So it looks like next up we have
Taylor Street.
The 9 p.m. 151 Taylor Street, construction of a structure for vehicle diagnostic testing.
So that's the one that they found out that they did not receive a variance for plumbing, and so they had to relocate that structure, and it's going to be relocated in an area where it is not within our jurisdictional buffer zone. So they had requested a formal withdrawal of the notice of intent.
Okay, very good. So that makes that one easy. That's been pulled back. Almost getting us back on time then. Oh, it looks like we have Randy Miller, who I believe is the property owner. Could we promote Randy to a panelist so he can comment? And to be clear, while Randy's getting on, Randy, you're the property owner of 65 Bruce Street?
I am, yes.
Okay, very good.
So I just was texting with John. He's trying to get back on now. I could answer some questions if you would like. If you'd like to wait for John to come back on, we can do that. But some of the questions that you were posing in regard to the septic site itself, mainly the septic system, where it'd be located, that would be lawn. I'm not opposed to planting trees along the eastern edge along Bruce Street to provide definitely some, I guess, masking or privacy for the property itself. So not opposed to replanting vegetation, trees, whatever the commission would like along the wall there to help offset what's going to be cleared. And then again, I don't know what John has as far as engineering goes between how close we can actually get to the septic system itself.
Understood. Yeah, with respect to trees, one of the things we're going to ask, I imagine we're going to ask you to do, Randy, is to quantify for us the trees that will be removed within the buffer zone and provide us with a plan for how those what can be replanted, where they will be replanted. And essentially what we're looking for in so many words is, to the extent that there's an impact to the buffer zone, how's that going to be offset?
Understood. I was listening earlier to 64. I think Beaver Brook and Beaver Street as well. So,
Yeah, same concept.
we're kind of like, we're going to need some help with that from you because there is kind of abstract. I'm open for suggestions, and I can make do or try to accommodate the best I can.
Okay. Yeah, the first step here is going to be an inventory, I think, of what's going to be removed. Commissioners, let me know if you disagree, but that's pretty typical.
There's mostly large pine trees that are in the area that will be excavated. Those mostly are all old, and I've already had some different companies come in, tree services, that have already kind of labeled those as suspect of breaking and falling down and are old. There's a few of them that have already crushed the power lines, and I'm sure the electrical company will be very happy to have them removed. With that, everything else is, there's ash, there's sugar maples, a lot of them that are smaller, less than 12 inches of diameter.
Yeah, well, the best way to do this is just have your team inventory what's there above. We're typically looking for inventories above 2 inches or so diameter breast height.
Okay.
Randy, while John's still waiting to sign on, I do think it, at the risk of testing your patience, I'd rather have the rest of this conversation while you're, say, represented. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to put you sort of on the back burner for a minute while we take on another one, and then we'll give John a chance to jump back on.
Absolutely, no problem. I just wanted to just let you know what's going on.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. So we're going to move to the 915 notice of intent for 97 and 99 Mill Road, parcel IDU 3531A, for construction of an electrical equipment area. Is there someone here to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm promoting them now.
Hey guys, I can leave this one off again. This is another light topic, Littleton light topic. So just to kick it off again, introduce myself since it's been a little while. So I'm Dave Ketchen, Assistant General Manager from the Littleton Light and Water Departments, discussing this 97 and 99 Mill Road project with me. I believe Steve Burns is going to be here from Citizens, Scott Cameron, and Don Sievers from the Moore and Cameron Group. So with this property, it's obviously, you guys know where it's located, right on Mill Road, right along the 495 exit off ramp there. And we're hoping to utilize this property for some peak shaving ability. So what we're proposing tonight is to install a new battery storage system on the property connected to our distribution system that will be owned and operated by Citizens. And it's sort of a cost sharing model where they'll be able to charge the battery during off peak hours, and then once the peak comes around and able to shed load on our system, we'll be able to dispatch that battery system for 3 hours at a time. And just the kind of short of it, the reason this is important is because how we get charged for purchasing power, energy, transmission capacity, all depends on these, peak hours of the months and of the year. So the more we can do during these peak hours, dispatching things like batteries, like our natural gas generators at our own offices, help drive those costs down and keep our electric rates low. So that's sort of the overall purpose of this project. And I'll invite I believe Dan Sievers from Moore and Cameron Group is going to speak next.
Hey, Dan, it looks like you're on. Floor's yours.
Good, and thanks, David. Appreciate the handoff. Good evening, members of the commission. Thank you for having us tonight. May I share my screen?
Yes, please.
All right. All right. For the record, my name is Dan Sievers, and I am a registered professional civil engineer with the Moore & Cameron Group at 66 Elm Street in Danvers, Massachusetts. We have the pleasure of being the civil engineer and surveyor for this proposed battery energy storage system project located at 97 and 99 Mill Street. We have been working with David Ketchen and Steve Burns on developing the site plans for this proposed project. I'm going to speak a little bit about the background of 97 and 99 Mill Road. The proposed property is situated along the boundary of 495. Let's see here. Give you a little idea of the location. We're on the boundary of 495 to the north of the site, the Beaver Brook, a perennial stream located to the south of the site. And also at the intersection of Warren Street and Mill Road, as you may know. The property is in the Industrial B zoning district and is previously developed property that has been used as such for a better part of the century. It was previously used as a lumberyard, and some evidence is still present on the ground, as you can see on sidewalks. The property was recently acquired by Littleton Electric and Light Department and is now being used for municipal electric and light operations, as well as other temporary contracting uses such as material stockpiling. All right, so we had LEC Environmental Consultants based out of Worcester, Massachusetts, delineate the limit of wetland resource areas on site, including the mean annual high water along Beaver Brook, which establishes our brook bank, which then establishes our 100 and 200 foot offsets from the bank, otherwise known as your 100 and 200 foot riverfront areas on site. Additionally, there's an off-site isolated wetland to the north associated with the highway drainage of Route 495. This is delineated with wetland flags and has a 100-foot buffer zone extending onto the site and is only jurisdictional under your local bylaw and not the Wetlands Protection Act. The bulk of the proposed work associated with this project is primarily within the riverfront area. Might be hard to see here. You've got your 200-foot riverfront denoted here, and your 100 here. Ahead of filing application, Scott Cameron of the Moore & Cameron Group met with town staff and officials to preview the proposed project on site. Earlier iterations of the proposed work had a larger footprint within the 100-foot riverfront area. From feedback received, we were able to adapt the project to be what it is today. Proposed enclosure, let's go to this sheet. As you can see, the proposed enclosure is outside of the 100-foot riverfront area and as close to the existing buildings as we can without causing access issues around the enclosure for both the existing uses on the property, along with any large maintenance vehicles or emergency vehicles that would need to get around the enclosure for the future. From a stormwater perspective, according to 310 CMR 10.585, the proposed work on site is considered a redevelopment within a previously developed riverfront area because it falls entirely within the footprint of the developed riverfront area. While we are proposing work within the 100 and 200 foot riverfront areas, the proposed work will increase the natural buffer between the stream bank and developed site, reduce degraded riverfront area on site by approximately 600 square feet, and decrease the overall total impervious area on site by around 20,000 square feet. Additionally, we are proposing to restore an area that has previously been degraded with gravel and material pilings off-site along with on-site, which totals for about 4,300 square feet, with about 1,000 square feet of that being within the property. We are proposing a wetland pollinator seed mix that we hope can bring back some pollinator habitat in the area closest to Beaver Brook. And just for a comparison, the area of proposed restoration is about the area of the equipment enclosure that we're proposing. As part of our submission and plan preparation, we followed the Rivers Protection Act section addressing performance standards for previously degraded riverfront area. prior to August 1st, 1996, which is the case here. I could run through the 8 associated standards if you would like. I'll just go ahead and go through them. So your standard A covers your minimum proposed work shall result in an improvement over the existing conditions. The proposed project here includes about 4,300 square feet of restoration of the innermost riverfront area adjacent to the proposed work, which includes removal of gravel and fill and replacement of such with loam and pollinator seed mix, like I've said before, while also increasing the natural buffer to Beaver Brook. So standard B covers your stormwater management being provided according to standards established by the department. The proposed work will result in a net reduction of impervious surface on site. Thus, mitigation of runoff is not necessary, and the project will improve its capacity to infiltrate stormwater due to this reduction. Additionally, construction erosion control measures, which I'll point out right here, we have proposed silt socks around the areas of proposed work. Let me see here, what do they call it? Proposed silt sock along the proposed boundary of work. And then moving on to the third standard C, proposed work shall not be located closer to the river than existing conditions. We are not proposing any work closer to the stream bank. We are actually increasing the natural setback to Beaver Brook. Standard D, proposed work including expansion of existing structures shall be located outside of the riverfront area boundary and away from the river. The fence location is situated outside of the 100-foot riverfront buffer zone and was value engineered to reduce the footprint by approximately 30% during the application consultation with Littleton Conservation Commission agent. Any other area on the property that would accommodate the enclosure and associated required access around it would have been situated within the 100-foot riverfront. Standard E, the area of proposed work shall not exceed the amount of degraded area, which we get covered by all the proposed work occurs within the degraded riverfront area, and no new riverfront area alteration is proposed. Standard F, which talks about the restoration requirements related to proposed alteration of the riverfront area, we have covered because the project has no new alteration proposed that requires restoration. Standard G, the standard does not apply since we are not proposing any mitigation. In Standard H, the standard covers the requirement of a certificate of compliance for this type of proposed project, which will be met once the final certificate of compliance is issued by the commission and recorded. I'm not sure if Steve's available to talk to the specifics of the electrical equipment, but I can pull up kind of give you an idea of what we're proposing for the electrical enclosure, which I think either Dave or Steve could speak to more precisely about the specifics, but
yeah, I can speak to some of the specifics that are going to be on there. It's basically, if you want to zoom in there, there's going to be 4 20-foot battery containers. We're referring to it as an inverter skid. That'll have 2 inverters and 2 transformers, one each on each of them, and then we'll have some additional switch gear and kind of a control panel on another concrete platform. So we're either going to have 4 battery containers, so 4 concrete platforms, and then we're either going to do 2 each on the other side, or it'll just be 2 in total. So we have, as Dan said, we have value engineered this to make it small, kind of keep the plan alive for Littleton Electric and, redeveloping the rest of the site as well. So we were trying to adhere to what they're trying to do in the future for the site, as well as make it appropriately situated in the site for permitting purposes.
But just to be clear, future plans, notwithstanding in LELWD's master plan, we're only looking at the application in the context of a battery storage facility, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I think we've got the general lay of the land here in terms of what's going on. Commissioners, what questions do you all have?
So you mentioned batteries, and I don't understand what battery. I understand what a battery is, and not to this scale. But all you've mentioned is that they're sitting on concrete pads. Is there any sort of containment, secondary containment? Walk me through what that setup looks like for these.
Can I tack on to that question because it may fit into this? Not just secondary containment, but also firefighting considerations while you're talking about that.
Yep. So we've met with Littleton Fire Department. We've had preliminary discussions with them. They've seen the proposed system. We haven't gotten any direction from them on what requirements they're going to have. This system will be fully designed and engineered with a battery energy storage integrator, and that means that there's a very high tech battery controls management, and each container is self-contained. So there are different ways to approach the safety aspect, which is why we're trying to work with the fire department ahead of time. But basically, there are different ways, there are different aspects of the safety that we need to work with Littleton Fire to get where they want to be for that. But I guess there is no, we're not planning to build in any secondary containment for any emergency events, if that's what the question was around.
What about if I assume these are liquid filled batteries, not solid state. So what about if they should spring a leak, rust out, whatever the term you want to use is?
Well, they're lithium ion batteries. I've never had the question before. I think if they had some sort of leak, that would be contained within the container itself. I've never had that question before. So they're liquid cooled. But I've never had them.
So what kind of liquid? And what about containment of the liquid for the coolant? My interest is I know this property is quite wet or can be in spots of it. And so, I know you're at the top of it, but I don't want to see anything leach out or leak out or, whatever words you want to use. And if it does, how do we contain it? This is the time for us to ask those questions, not when it happens.
Yep. Yeah, understood. I've never been asked about a battery or any of the coolant getting out of the container itself, so I can see if there's any literature on that or any sort of direction on that.
Yeah, I think maybe what you're getting a sense of here, Steve, is I'm going to speak for myself in part, that the overall improvement to the project, to the property, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like Dan laid out how a lot of the requirements for work within a previously degraded riverfront area are really seeking to improve it, not necessarily make it pristine. What you're hearing, though, I think, is some concern about impact to resource areas through the operations, whether that's leaks or fires. And part of this is we do a lot of septic systems. We don't do a lot of battery storage. And so understanding the potential impact to resource areas here is something that we're going to have to get comfortable with before we permit it, if that makes sense to you.
Sure.
And I'm going to glom onto that with respect to the firefighting questions. I'd really like to understand what could be done to ensure that if there was a fire, what I would not want to have happen here is if there was a fire for whatever firefighting activities to essentially push all of the impacts from a lithium ion battery fire into Beaverbrook. So if that's some berming on the edge of this, if that's some sort of containment system, that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking for.
For the record, we're still going through the process with the planning board and fire department, and you bring up a lot of valid things that need to be addressed, and we can address those with the fire department from all the things that you bring up in your concerns today.
Yep. Yeah, I figure we're not going to be the only ones, but we are charged in with looking primarily at the resources. So even if the fire department says we're happy with this from a ability to put out a fire context, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be comfortable with it from the impacts of putting out that fire to resource areas.
Such as to put the fire out, will they have to use foam? Well, where's that foam going to end up?
Yep. Things like that.
Yep. I would say from the water department side, we're in the light department, we're on the same page. So.
It's getting late here, and I don't want to draw this out too much. My sense is here probably the next step is probably a site walk. Dave, does that make sense to you guys?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Are you guys in a position to do a site walk right now, or are you just introducing the project and you need to get a little further with other parties before we do a site walk?
I think we're ready to have a site walk for sure.
Okay. So that means resource areas flagged and delineated, and footprint of the project is marked in the field?
Yep. It's currently staked out.
Okay. Commission, what's your appetite for a sidewalk?
Yeah, I'm curious to see it.
Is this something we could tack on to our site walk on the 22nd? That's currently at 4:30. If we tack on something, say 5:30?
Took the words right out of my mouth, Chase.
Is that okay? Dave, you and your team okay with maybe a little later in the day there?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay. I'm going to give you the same qualifier I gave the other applicant. We'll confirm that with you via email just in case the rest of members really can't do it.
Okay, that works.
But let's plan on the 22nd at 5:30 p.m. Commissioners, any other threshold issues you want to go through tonight, or are we good moving on from this?
I just have a quick question on demo. So kind of nothing south of that is really, or south on the plan is being touched. Those existing buildings are all staying. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. So we have a couple sheds that we are proposing to remove over in this area. There's a lean-to shed and a shed.
Yep.
In this general area, along with a lot of material piles, which you'll see on sheet 1 that we're calling out to remove. But as far as the other functional existing buildings, those are all to remain as the current use for the property as well.
Then we'll leave it at that. Dave, you know how to get a hold of Tim if you want to discuss this further, get some additional thoughts when it's not 10 o'clock at night.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to pivot back to, thought I saw John. Yep. We're going to pivot back to 65 Bruce Street. John, you should be able to unmute yourself. Understanding that it is almost 10 p.m. and we still have one more item to do, I'd like to keep this as quick as we can. We were working through issues on the southern portion of the property. One of the things that we had indicated to Randy while you were off was we will want a tree survey, what trees are going to be removed, and we will want a replanting and restoration plan. Tim, conservation agent, can help you work through what is generally been things that we've accepted there. Commissioners, any other comments on the southern portion of the property before we get to the addition on the north? Hearing no objection, I do want to take on this idea of the addition to the north. Let me preface this by saying, John, we tend to take a fairly, say, dim view of work in the 50. And so one of the things that I'm going to ask you for is to expand upon your waiver request, specifically with this addition in mind. Review specifically the language of the waiver and tell me exactly how this addition meets the requirements of the waiver. And I think that's going to be an important piece of this. Other commission comments? Kyle, Ed, Michael, Tim?
I don't suppose moving the addition forward, there's enough room to do that, to get it out, or even most of it out, taking some of the driveway.
Yeah, your 50-foot buffer zone is cutting right through.
Yeah, I know.
If you're not familiar with the site, I mean, there really is no option to put anything out in the front. It doesn't make any sense with the existing house and footprint. So, and this is area that's already utilized for vehicles. Standing there looking at the site, it makes sense to me at least. So, I would certainly take your input, but it's the appropriate place for it. I would know.
John, I do have one question about that argument, though, that it's used for vehicles. So it looks like the addition is proposed to be 24 by 24. But when I pull up an aerial, the footprint of that area is not 24 by 24. It's half as wide as that. Are we really building this only on compacted gravel?
There's the existing retaining wall is shown on the plan. It's a little hard to see in the color up because it's behind the brown. And then the gravel area is contained within that. I can open up that photo again. It's 2 cars wide and it was survey located to show the sizing of it. So does it match it exactly? No, it's probably 6 inches off on one side and a foot off on the other, but it's not half the size. It's the same general footprint. I would note you called out that the addition is 24 by 24, which is shown on my plan. I did receive the architectural plans today, and they're looking at 24 by 26. So they're coming out another 2 feet on the front. So I do need to update that information to you and then make sure that gets into the application. But that is a little bit increase in size, but on the side away from the wetlands. So I want to make sure you're aware of that as we move forward.
Something I think we'll want to see in the field, John.
I do have the pictures if I can get back to them, but I apologize and I appreciate your patience. Whatever, my computer just crashed and didn't want to play.
No worries. While you're pulling those photos up, commissioners, what other comments do you have here?
The usual protection against erosion and all that stuff.
Okay.
I did go and look at what is the average width of a truck and width of a car. And if you take just those two immediately touching each other, you're at about 13 or 14 feet. So
wouldn't be the first time the angle of an aerial just doesn't line up really.
Yeah, I was just going to say, right?
Yeah, the aerial's tough.
Yep.
I mean, this is based on survey information.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I want to put eyeballs on in the field, but to the extent that it is not a match, that could be a problem, a bigger problem. To the extent that it is, I think we still have some challenges, John. I'm not sure that historically we have ever permitted an expansion like this of an existing residence. And just to give you a sense of how closely we've held this line with respect to work in the 50, we've turned down applications to have people put on elevated decks that simply extend into the 50. So that's where I can't emphasize enough the importance of making your best argument in a waiver request specific to that addition.
Okay, I appreciate the candor. Yeah, and I certainly would not have suggested to the client that this be proposed if it were in an area that was, you know, wooded or natural. In this case, it is. I think we got some. You're 32 feet from the wetlands, but you're also 10 feet or so off the tree line currently, which is existing lawn at this point. And this does show that's that retaining wall right there, which is about 25 feet off the building. So, we're slightly under what that footprint is, and it's parking. So, again, I wouldn't have come in front of the commission if we were cutting down trees and in a naturalized area, but this is area that's currently used. It's where the cars sit. So it seemed to me that if it was going to go anywhere, this was the right place. So
understood. I just want to set the expectations there.
That's definitely the part I'm struggling with, Chase. I totally agree that this is a non-starter, you know, probably 98% of the time, right? But I'm trying to weigh the benefit of keeping a gravel driveway there over a contained garage where you're getting rid of sediment, getting rid of oil, other fluids that are going into the ground right now. I don't know.
You're not actually getting rid of them because they'll end up on the garage floor and eventually. But yeah, I hear. I'm with
sure.
You.
That's a big stretch.
Feels to me like an improvement, but it's so much in the 50. That's
yeah.
Well, the whole lot's in the 50. I mean, the whole house, and everything. It's been there for. I think it was constructed in 1945, or maybe. Don't quote me on that, but it's been there a long time. So
yeah.
I don't want to belabor this too much, John. I think you've heard where the commission is in terms of paying attention to these things. So
yep.
So what we've asked you for is, with respect to the septic area, tree survey, construction plans in terms of material storage and stockpiling. We've asked you for an expansion of an explanation of, to the north, the basis for why this meets the waiver requirements. And we've asked you for consideration of the stormwater regs. I will point out to you that where our bylaw says 1,000 square feet or 5% more, there is, to the extent practicable. And so we don't necessarily intend to impose the full stormwater regs on people if it's completely impracticable, but you need to make that argument.
No, I understand. I'll point out that under the state regulations, single family homes are exempt from the stormwater management. We're under that 1,000 square foot requirement. I suspect we are not under the 5%, which is a very low percentage. And we can certainly work with you to try and provide some infiltration, which in this case is about, in my mind, all that would need to be mitigated. I don't see TSS removal as an issue. We're already improving that. A little bit of infiltration to mitigate pre-post seems like it would be a reasonable approach. So
I think you're on the right track.
Okay.
Commissioners, do we need a sidewalk?
See, the fact that the house is in the mostly in the 50.
I will tell you, I think at a minimum, we need to confirm the wetland line, right? So much of this turns on where that line is.
Sure.
That Tim, if nothing else, I think in the intervening 2 weeks, it'll be important for you to get out there and confirm you're comfortable with that line.
Sure.
Commissioners, any other need for a sidewalk? Sounds like no. Okay. Then John, we'd ask you to agree to continue this for at least 2 weeks, or as long as you need to address some of the things that we've put on your plate.
Is my understanding you typically have a 1 week submission deadline prior to your hearing?
A few days. Yeah, not a week, but.
Okay. But then I'd like to be on in 2 weeks. I think we can react to the questions, and I can reach out to Tim and make sure that I've gotten some of the items checked and come back in 2 weeks. And then if for some reason we have a hang up, we could always continue to a later date. But I'd like to leave the option open to resolve this as shortly as possible.
Okay, very good. We'll continue then to the 27th.
Thank you. I appreciate your time tonight.
Okay, we're almost there, guys. Well, not really. We got a bunch of administrative stuff to do, but looks like we got Tim here. I imagine Tim's not just here hanging out to talk about listen to Parks and Rec. We'll pull Tim in to talk about Long Lake Docks and maybe Saul too, I think.
I could actually lead with this, Chase, if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead. Whatever gets us through this faster.
Yep. So why we're here is because of the storage of the docks, right? And there were concerns raised about the location of where the docks are being stored. In the order of conditions that we issued when this was permitted, it states within the findings that the docks will not be stored within the buffer zones. I went back and I watched both meetings where this was discussed. You guys asked him where the docks have historically been stored, and he mentioned where they're being stored now. It's within the access, that gravel access to the boat ramp, right? There was no further discussion on that. There was no explicit, docks will not be stored within the buffer zone. My theory about what happened was we have boilerplate language that we take for special conditions, right? And we had a dock that was being permitted at Zero Fort Pond in the months prior to that. My best guess is that the boilerplate language from those special conditions, we copied it over, and it was a mistake that it wasn't removed, and that's why it's in there. So not sure if you guys would like to see this as a request for an amended order of conditions where we can remove that language, or how you would like to proceed with that. And Tim, if you have anything to add, by all means.
Yeah, just real quickly, if I can share my screen real quick, just so you guys can. So we've been working prior to all of this for the past couple of years to work on getting the boat ramp updated, and this week the Fish and Game Commission actually was able to come out. I don't know if you guys are able to see. So this is currently one of the items that was brought up, was where the signpost was, the kiosk that was the Fish and Game kiosk. So the new DEP Chapter 91 regulations require the kiosk to actually be on the driver's side, within a certain distance of being able to drop in on the actual boat ramp. So the sign is now relocated onto the beach side, rather than being on the passenger side further up the boat ramp where it was.
No, I thought we were pedantic sometimes.
So this is the new kiosk that was actually installed on Wednesday, along with all of the signage that was replaced from the waterway all the way up to Goldsmith. We were 2 generations behind Fish and Game signages and regulations for where they wanted certain things. Happy to share all of this with you. Just for brevity, I will show you the one thing that was contested the most, which was the hitchhiker sign, and the placement of the docks in front of the kiosk were brought up in that one comment. I have actually talked to Rob since then, and he was pretty ecstatic that all of the changes that have been made, and very happy to know that we had worked through this. The other thing that I wanted to share with you all, sorry. Is currently we are working through the whole process with the showing up here. Sorry. Sorry. I shared it with Tim. I'll just talk to it right now. So I did go through the whole Chapter 91 one process. As you guys are aware, there's a complete new process for filing for docks. It's taken about 17 hours so far for the full licensing through the WW1 process, which will give the seasonal dock permits for the next 15 years. Today, I filed the request from the state for the public notice, which will be posted on May 15th for this particular situation. And it can take up to an additional 6 weeks to finish the process. So we are going through the full process, which ultimately comes back to you guys on what we're talking about tonight.
So after all that's resolved, it sounds like the last piece is where the docks are stored. Is that right, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioners, let's start with this. Any objection to allowing Parks and Rec to store the docks adjacent to the water? Because right now our conditions say they're not allowed to. If there is a problem with that, then we should stick with our language.
Can I ask one question just for clarity for everybody, because it's kind of a double question? So we can move the docks back. I think Tim and I measured it 17 feet, and they are outside of where your restriction is. However, the comment that was made by the resident also took into consideration the stormwater runoff basin that was put in by the state, and should there be a buffer zone to that. So I just want to put it all on the table while we're talking about it. I can easily move the docks back 17 feet and have plenty of room for storage, including the new docks that were approved in the CPC, the additional docks that we're going to request with the CPC funds. I think the bigger question now is are we going to be held to moving back from that catch basin?
Tim, was that 17 feet to get out of the 50 or to get out of the 100?
I forget what we talked about. I think that was out of.
I think that might have been the 50.
Yeah, the 50.
In the language that's currently that exists in the order, it includes the 100.
Okay.
But the area that Tim's talking about is there is a drainage channel that runs from. It might be an outfall. I haven't seen it in person myself, but it runs from. I believe it's an outfall to Long Lake, so that would be considered.
It's the stormwater that runs down Meadowbrook, and it's the storm. There's basically 4 basins that are taking out sediment before it reaches Long Lake. From that, coming off of Goldsmith from that side of Meadowbrook and Long Lake neighborhood.
Let me weigh in this way. To the extent that the objection for the docks being relatively proximal to the water is being raised as a concern, I understand some people, the public, have had concerns about how Parks and Rec has managed the docks in general. I will tell you from my perspective, that's not our purview. All we're answering is whether or not that has implications for the resource areas. And so to the extent that the issues are how they're stored, are they messy, so on and so forth, that's for you to sort out, Tim. So it sounds like when I asked this once, nobody really had any issues. I want to confirm though, nobody has any substantive issues with the Parks and Rec docks being stored within the 50-foot buffer. Is that correct? Are there any issues with that? Because if there aren't, then we can talk about process.
Yeah, I don't see an issue that we let them store them in the resource, right? What's the difference storing it within 10 feet of the resource?
Thank you, Kyle.
If it's not causing any sort of functional problem of that area, other than maybe an eyesore, again, that's not our purview, right? So I personally do not have a concern with the way they've been stored.
hearing no other objections to that, then it's a process question. What I would put on the table for the commission is we should handle this just as an amended order of conditions. That we agree, need a motion, but we agree to strike that particular language from the order of conditions.
Yeah, remove condition number blah blah blah, condition C5, whatever it is, Tim. Like, is that? Do you know what it is?
It's actually not even a special. It's not a condition itself. It's just within the findings.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so just strike this language.
If we were to act on this as an amended order of conditions, we would need. This hearing wasn't posted as a request for an amended order of conditions. It was just posted as a public hearing. So we would need to post that for the meeting on the 27th and make any action at that meeting.
Okay. Let's do that, Tim. Appreciate you keeping us honest on that. Sure. And other Tim, bad Tim, our Tim's good Tim, bad Tim. I don't think you need to. Like, we'll try and get you on early so we can just get right through that. So you don't need to spend 3 hours of your evening listening to us yammer on.
Okay.
Unless you want to.
I say you sound disappointed to not do that, but all right.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move that forward, and Tim, just put Tim on. Good Tim, put bad Tim on early in the.
Let's try it. We've already got 4 that have time set, so I think we're being pushed out until probably 8:45 now. But beats 10 o'clock, so I mean.
Honestly, Tim, if you want to, good Tim, if you want to give bad Tim 7:40 p.m., right? Like this is just going to be a 5-minute thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna, unless there's anything else, we're gonna move on from this one. Good Tim, have a good night. No, not good Tim. Bad Tim.
Thanks, Chase.
Good Tim.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you guys.
Take care.
Way to close this down.
We got to circle back to the certificate of compliance issues.
Yes.
You want to run down those? Essentially, are there any that you're concerned about?
There are some that I feel like the details should be touched on.
Okay.
But I will keep it as concise as possible. In fact, I've got notes here in order to do that because I anticipated a long meeting. So first one being 35 Grimes Lane. The older order, there's 2 requests for certificate of compliance for this property. The older order, work was never started under this order conditions. Since work was never started, a certificate of compliance would be issued for an invalid order of conditions. Since it expired, no work was done.
It's a new one, but okay, cool. I'm going to move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 35 Grimes Lane, Mass DEP file number 2040620.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Kyle.
Kyle Maxwell.
Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Michael.
Bill Livingston, aye.
Myself, Chase Gerbig, aye.
All right, next one, 35 Grimes Lane. When they came in front of the commission, they got an order. They changed up their plans from what was approved in the previous order. They have since completed their work in compliance with the order conditions, and the site is stable.
And you've inspected it relatively recently?
I have. Yep, I went out there probably 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago at this point. Yeah.
Okay, so you're recommending we issue the COC?
Yep.
Okay. I'll move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 35 Grimes Lane, DEP file number 2040829.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Mike.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxwell, aye.
Myself, Chase Gerbig, aye.
All right, next one, Long Lake Pathway. This work was actually completed not long after we issued the order. We were just waiting on the area to be stabilized, and it has since been stabilized. So it is good to go.
Okay. I'm only pausing for a second here in case anybody has questions. Jump in if you do. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep rolling through these. I move that we issue a certificate of compliance for Long Lake Pathway DEP file number 2041002.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Ed.
Full side.
Kyle,
Maxfield, aye.
myself, Chase Garabay, aye.
All right, next one, 17 Mattawanakee Trail. We were waiting for stabilization again. The area has been stabilized and the work has been completed in compliance with the order, and I recommend that it is good to go.
Move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 17 Mattawanakee Trail, DEP file number 2040985.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ed,
Ed Fultz.
Kyle,
Maxfield, aye.
Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
myself, Chase Garabay, aye.
All right, next one. Apologize for looking down the whole time. I'm just reading my notes I wrote for myself.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
73 Hartwell. Order conditions was issued by you guys for this work. Upon appeal, DEP issued a superseding order. Both orders were recorded, even though our or your guys' order should not have been. There was minimal work that was started. I believe it was just some clearing for the driveway. But because no work was done under our order, it was only done under the superseding order, and our order should have never been recorded in the first place. I spoke with DEP about this, and they recommended, again, issuing the certificate of compliance for an invalid order of conditions. So it should have never been recorded. They will have to go through the process of getting a certificate of compliance for the superseding order through DEP before we can issue a new order of conditions for the NOI that's in front of us right now. So they're the property owners are in contact with DEP regarding this, and DEP is going to have to do a site walk, the whole nine.
Yes.
Okay. So this does not prejudice our ability to look at other elements of it. We're simply saying superseding order is all that matters.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Then I move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 73 Hartwell Avenue, DEP 204-0859.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
Ed,
Ed Fultz.
Kyle,
Maxfield, aye.
myself, Chase Garabay, aye.
Next one, 166 Whitcomb. All these unique certificate requests. Because I've been here almost 3 years now, and I feel like these have never come up, but they all came at once. Order conditions was issued for this upon appeal. Superseding order issued by DEP, or back then it was the DEP equivalent because it was so long ago. Both orders were recorded, and they got a certificate of compliance for the superseding order. However, our order still remains tied to the title. So we would be issuing the certificate of compliance for an invalid order of conditions.
Very good. Then I move we issue a certificate of compliance for 166 Whitcomb Ave, Mass DP file number 2040091.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ed,
Ed Fultz.
Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
Kyle,
Maxfield, aye.
Chase Garabay, aye. Yeah, that's an old one. 0091
I was
is the
just
file
gonna say,
number.
I don't even remember that project, so I just tried to pull up on the map to see if I could recognize it. I don't even.
All right, the discussion for the conservation parcel and Parks and Recs, storage proposal. Do you guys want to table that to the next meeting?
As long as it's not time sensitive, yes, please.
Yeah, not time sensitive. All right.
Okay.
Next one, donation of land, parcel ID U23160. Gentleman would like to donate this parcel to the Conservation Commission. This is over by the Long Lake Outlet. I could pull up the imagery of it if you'd like. It's all of those roads that are now, there's nothing, it's all natural now. All of the surrounding parcels are under the care, custody, and control of Conservation Commission. So if you guys voted to approve this, I've got the language here. I believe I included it in the email. I can pull it up if you guys would like to vote to approve, but obviously open discussion first.
I did have one question here, Tim. nothing's ever happened on this land, right? Like in terms of operations, build, like I'm wary of the town taking over something that, I don't know, maybe I just live in contaminated sites too much, but had some bad thing happen in the past.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I've seen the assessor's maps that show all of these properties subdivided, and all the roads, but I've never seen imagery of actual roads and houses or whatever. I can confirm that with the assessors, but honestly, I'm not sure.
If we already own all the lots around it, then if there was anything bad, as you say, Chase, wouldn't we already have it on our
we're
other
stuck
properties?
already.
We're
Yeah.
already there. We're already in
If
it.
someone's willing
In
to
for a
donate us
penny,
a
in
piece
for a
of land,
pound.
I don't see why we wouldn't take it.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be the first time I was being paranoid about things.
And it's nice that the person is trying to protect, however small or large, I don't know how big it is.
No,
piece
it's
of
over
property.
2.5 acres. It's
Yeah,
big.
that's a good chunk of land.
That's a nice chunk of change, yeah. It's like I said, it's nice that this person's willing to protect it.
I will add the process for this. If you guys vote to approve the donation, it would need your guys' vote. It would go to the select board for a vote, and then it would come back to both boards for signatures.
Accepting it, I don't know how.
All right, you want me to lead us? So
Yeah.
I'll move to vote that the Conservation Commission accept as a gift from John McSweeney the land located at Dover Drive, Littleton, Massachusetts, identified on Littleton's assessor map as U23-16-0, and being the same land that was deeded to John McSweeney by Daniel McSweeney by deed recorded at book 12395, page 13, which parcel contains 2.66 acres, more or less, for conservation and passive recreation purposes under Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution, and on such other terms as the Conservation Commission shall deem to be in the best interests of the town.
Second.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Kyle?
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Ed?
Ed Foldside?
Michael?
Michael Livingston, aye.
And myself, Chase Garabay.
All right, next one, Tree City USA. Real quick, just to update you guys. We finally received recognition of Tree City USA for Littleton for the year of 2024. This opens us up to grant opportunities and some other things. That's all for that. Any questions or concerns? You okay with me moving on to the next? All right. Assistant Conservation Agent updates real quick too. We've received probably 25 applications for the assistant agent position, posted at 40 hours a week. The incoming assistant agent will be working 40 hours, focusing on only conservation until the end of summer, where they will then begin splitting their time, 25 hours conservation, 15 Clean Lakes Committee, or Clean Lakes related issues. The 15 hours towards the lake issues is going to be funded by the water department. So just want to let you guys know, interviews for that start up next week.
I will say, having looked at the list of resumes, I was pleasantly surprised by the depth of the resumes. I really thought we were not going to find a lot of good applications, and it went exactly the opposite way.
No, I'll make it more difficult somehow.
Yeah, Tim's got some work in front of him here. And I believe Andrew and or Sarah are going to sit in on those interviews. Sarah is the co-chair. Andrew, because frankly, he sits in the building and has the bandwidth to participate. And of course, brings more experience than any of the rest of us with the Conservation Commission.
That's it for me. Anybody have anything else they?
I'm gonna bring up one more thing real quick. I don't want to make Chase mad, but I talked to Tim about this. So, when we didn't show up to our last meeting, our last quorum, the next day or 2 days later, I received basically a bill from Tim for me to sign off on, that he had to re-notify everybody because we didn't make quorum. I guess there could have been a way around that as well if we would have posted something on LCTV or whatnot. But long story short, we had to spend $150, $200 of our money to repost everything. It seems like something we should be able to avoid with 7 people on the board. So just, I don't know, we got to be a little bit more conscious about waiting until Tuesday night to say, hey, I'm not going to make it, so we can come up with an alternative plan.
Yeah, and I mean, a couple $100 isn't good, but also I worry that it undermines our credibility with people too.
Yeah.
And even tonight,
not that it's Michael's fault, but it happens again tonight.
No, and I was someone who bailed at the last minute a couple of weeks ago too. So. Yep, and try not to do that again. Now, Tim, in terms of dealing with that, if we know we're not going to have quorum, let's say on the Wednesday before the subsequent Tuesday, that's less of a problem for you, right?
Yes, because we have it's
things are already noticed for that meeting.
Yeah, right? I mean, we'd still have to do the same things and have LCTV post something during the time of when the meeting was scheduled. That gives us the power to not have to re-notify the abutters for whatever meetings were or whatever public hearings were scheduled for the night.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we'll try to avoid it.
But it is nice to have that advance notice to be able to let LCTV know too.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for that reminder, Kyle. Anything else that we need to cover tonight? Okay. I think we have room for one last motion. I'll move that we adjourn the Conservation Commission meeting of May 13th, 2025 at 10:23 p.m.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Michael?
Michael Livingston, aye.
Kyle? Kyle?
You don't want to end, Kyle?
Can't hear me anymore? Kyle,
No,
good enough. We heard you. Ed?
Ed Full-Time.
And myself, Chase Garvey guy. Thanks a lot for sticking around tonight, guys. And thanks for all your help on this, Tim.
Yeah, of course.
Good night.
Have a good night.